Okay, so we have a toolkit of environmental policies that are sometimes used to fix market failures. So to somehow incorporate the real cost of producing something to the environment and to, like, in a systems perspective. So when we talk about these environmental policies, one is what is referred to as command and control. And so this is where, for example, a government could impose laws and regulations to reduce the amount of a pollutant. So in the example of emissions, to reduce the amount of a pollutant that is emitted from a factory. So that's the command, is that you have laws and regulations. For example, reducing pollutants, for example. So the control has to do with the technology. So what are you going to use to control the release of those emissions? So maybe you have scrubbers installed on your factory smokestacks that reduce the amount of pollutants that are released into the atmosphere. So this is imposing law and regulations on companies that they just cannot do that, right? So we also have what are referred to as market-based incentives. So this is where we make it just less profitable for a company to behave in a particular way. And so this is where the cost of the product is changed to reflect the real cost to the environment. Right. So we could do this by taxing, say, for example, having a gasoline tax. And that gasoline tax would then provide an incentive for people to drive less so that they would not pollute as much. We could also have an example of cap and trade. And so governments could actually cap the amount of pollutants that a particular industry could reduce or produce. So for example, you could allow an industry to pollute a certain amount, so you cap it, and then you give them a permit and it says, I can release this much CO2 into the atmosphere. And then what you could do is that then you could allow them to trade their permits with other permits, almost like on a stock exchange. So they can exchange carbon points or whatever on a stock market so that you could trade them. So cap and trade is where the government limits pollution levels and issues permits to pollute. And then what do? You can trade those permits. You could even do this in a household, right? So you could say, I'm going to use so much fossil fuels, and then I might want to offset the fossil fuels that I am using so I could actually buy that. So if you see companies that are like carbon neutral, what they've done is that they've actually bought, this is a little bit different, but this is more like being seen by your consumers as being ethical. If I'm carbon neutral, and in my company I say I'm carbon neutral, that means that I estimate the energy that I'm using, just like when we did the carbon footprint, and then I buy like carbon credits to offset that. And it could be that I'm buying into a organization that is conserving the rainforest, or an organization that is conserving coral reefs. And that gives me carbon credits so that I can become carbon neutral. That is also kind of related to market-based incentives, and that's capitalism, me trying to sell my product by saying that I am more sustainable. My product and my business is more sustainable than somebody else's.